Hello, everybody. My name's Beck. I'm the Director of Psychology and Psychotherapy in SLAM. I'd like to welcome you to this broadcast, which is the rather a few into a series of broadcasts that we've been having on building psychological resilience in local communities. We're very proud today to be able to profile the work of Project Futures, and I'll introduce the team to you in a minute. Just to give you a background to these broadcasts, the purpose of these broadcasts is to introduce some of the innovative work that's being done by psychological therapists to support the work of local communities in preventing the development of mental health problems or supporting people with mental health problems outside of secondary care. And of course, we all know that most of the work in supporting people with mental health problems does in fact take place outside of secondary mental health care. So it's really important to see all the great work that's being done, not just by clinicians, but also by the fantastic charities and third sector organisations, and from small to large, that really help to make up this huge healthcare landscape that we work within. And also particularly at this time with the potential second wave of COVID being imminent, I think we are all acutely aware that there are some people who are at particular risk at these times, and we know that there have been a very sharp increase in the number of deaths of young people in unexplained circumstances, and we are of course all concerned about that and concerned about the ways in which we can address some of these frightening statistics. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce or ask the Project Futures team to introduce themselves. So let's start first of all with Suchi.
Thank you, Al, for that introduction. So I'm Suchi Bhandari. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist and Barnet Enfield Haringey Trust Head of Psychological Therapies.
And Hannah.
Hi, so my name is Hannah Stringer. I'm a clinical psychologist with a special interest in community psychology, and I'm the project lead at Project Future, which is a co-produced emotional wellbeing service for young men in Haringey.
And Shaheem? Shaheem is not going to be a picture, he's only going to be a voice, but we assure you that he's here. Shaheem, would you like to introduce yourself?
All right, can you hear me clearly?
Yep.
All right, yeah, my name's Shaheem, and I'm currently a peer researcher and community consultant at Project Future.
Thank you. So Suchi, maybe you can tell us something about the context of this work and how it came about.
It would help if I go on unmute. Thank you, Al, for inviting us to talk a little bit about Project Future. So Project Future is a holistic mental health and well-being service, which I have launched about 6 years ago. And the important pillar is that we have launched it in partnership with the Mental Health NHS Trust, Haringey Council, and charity partner, initially with MAC UK and more recently with Mind in Haringey. But obviously we work across the whole system, including the criminal justice system, prisons, probation, public health, community safety, and of course the voluntary sector, amongst many others. We believe that no single organisation can provide solutions to the complex and multi-level difficulties of our young people. And obviously we have this shared leadership across the statutory and voluntary and charity sector allows us to tap into a variety of expertise. So now I'll just tell you a little bit about who we serve and the context. So we have engaged in these 6 years in excess of 300 really hard to reach young people in one of the most deprived wards in the country, in Haringey. Our young people are involved and affected by serious youth violence, gang affiliations, and have severe unmet mental health needs and are usually socially excluded and marginalized. and what we do in Project Future is we've adapted evidence-based psychological practice using co-production to meet in a very bespoke manner to meet their complex needs. Being in a very deprived sort of area obviously comes with its challenges. And one of the things that I think, Al, you had asked in the past was, how did the finance come about? So what we've done is we generated a lot of financial savings across the system, and this was right from the start, by pooling multiple streams of funding, including NHS England, local authority, public health, big lottery, comic relief, and other private funders in a climate of severe cuts. And that's something that it's very important to team up and to have formal partners in the charity sector providers, because in the statutory sector we cannot hold charitable funds. So that's also very useful. And very lastly, before I hand over to Hannah, I will just say that Project Future is a platform for our young people's voices to be heard. As you can see over the time, and I won't give you an exhaustive list, but our young people have provided evidence at the Home Affairs Select Committee for the government's serious youth violence strategy. They have presented and launched at the House of Lords our Centre for Mental Health independent evaluation report. They inform on the Mayor's Violence Reduction Unit, just to name a few, and the list just goes on. So on that high note, I will hand over to Hannah to talk a little bit about the interventions in the project. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Suchi. I think it's really interesting to hear about this this work that you're doing, but it is we probably have in the audience quite a few psychological therapists who probably want to know a little bit about the skills that are relevant for maybe clinicians like them, and how you, Hannah, came to be involved and what you feel that you bring.
Absolutely. And I guess first, if I kind of set the context in terms of how we work as psychologists at Project Future, and then I can say a little bit to kind of the specific skills that I think are really useful and beneficial in this type of work. So just to touch on what Suchi has referred to, kind of at Project Future, we don't position young people as a problem, but as being the kind of experts in their own lives, and that problems are kind of as a result of the multiple health, race and social inequalities. And it's really because of that context that we work at multiple different levels across the system. So not only an individual and peer level, but also at a community and kind of wider system level, both locally and nationally, to try and challenge some of those structural barriers. And that's some of the work that Suchi mentioned at the kind of House of Lords and kind of at a policy level, to try and ensure young people's voices are in those spaces, but trying to tackle some of those systemic barriers. So with the young people themselves, the multidisciplinary team and our team of youth employees and peer researchers kind of wrap psychologically informed support around really whatever the young person is seeking help for. And so help seeking is really led by the young person themselves. And generally that falls into kind of four main categories, our four main objectives, which are around improving young people's emotional well-being, increasing their stability, increasing their access to education and employment. And as a result of that, I guess we hope to be able to then reduce kind of the need for offending. And what I would say is a lot of this work doesn't necessarily look like traditional psychological therapy, but that the principles very much inform that work. And it's really kind of the psychological thinking that underpins the one-to-one and group interactions, and really whatever the activity is that we're running in the Project Future space. And then at a wider level, so at a community and wider system level, as Suchi spoke to, Project Future uses its platform to be involved in lots of different social action and dissemination work. And that's really to try and share young people's perspectives and ideas around solutions to some of the challenges that they're facing. And all of this work, as Suchi mentioned, is co-produced with the young people. And we're really trying to raise the profile of young people's voices and ensure that they're being heard in spaces that they may not usually be heard in, and in front of people who have some influence and power to make systemic changes, although they can feel slow at times. And so, to your question,
that's partly, just to interrupt you, that's partly why we'd like the audience to participate a little bit, wouldn't we, with this broadcast, because we'd like to know, does this resonate with the audience? Is this the sort of, because there will be many people in the audience who have power. They may not feel that they have power, but they have the power to commission these kind of services, to engage with these kind of services, and to begin to influence these kind of system changes. So I don't know if there's anything you'd like to, particularly say to the audience about how they might embark on that kind of work.
Should I come to myself first? Yeah. So I guess for me, it's really speaking to commissioners and funders about approaching this with an open-mindedness about what we're considering intervention to be. And at Project Future, really what we're positing is that intervention is multifaceted, and it's beyond just the therapy room in its traditional sense. And it's with a real focus on kind of different approaches and implementing our broad kind of psychological skills and underpinnings that actually enable us to kind of build resilience and build community resilience and really harness community resource in a whole range of different ways. So being able to kind of draw on different models and theories that enable us to create spaces that not only kind of witness, acknowledge, but also build on young people's skills, abilities and resources. Suchi, I don't know if you've got something to add on that.
So I was just going to thank you, Hannah. Completely agree with you. Just to also help with sort of delivering in the community, it's very important. And when this is going back 6 years, when we set up the project, we did a lot of stakeholder engagement. We had to do a lot of buy-in and engagement with right at the top level, with the execs in the NHS, in all the statutory sector, including the chief execs actually of the council of the mental health trust, but also the commissioners and key stakeholders. So I would say do a lot of thinking and stakeholder engagement. Get your partners also, get your thinking around the right partners who can deliver, and also then design and deliver in the heart of the community that you are going to serve. So we did a lot of thinking around, where the high risk areas are. We had a lot of intelligence from community safety and other partners to really think about where would be the best place. And also we had to do a bit of searching around for estates and a lot of thinking on really, and we picked the most deprived ward in the whole country in Haringey. It's one of the most, and we thought that would really benefit. So if you're looking at a community service and increasing community capacity and community resilience, what best to, there can be no better area than to pick one of the most deprived areas. And I'd say something at this point to really think about his experience and the benefits of a project like this in the heart of the community, of young men that we serve in a very non-restrictive setting. So they're not hospital settings, they're not in prisons, they're not in inpatient settings, but in a non-restrictive, open space and a space where we have developed trust with our young people. But I'll pass it on.
Can you hear?
I kind of don't even know where to start from, but before Project Future was in the community, someone that's been in education like majority of my life, I felt like that's all I had, and I had to stick to that. And most of the time, that's like just sticking to one topic area. So like for me, I was more into sports and whatever. Before Project Future, I just felt like that's all I had, and I couldn't branch out of that box. I felt like I was stuck in the box basically. But when Project Future came around, I felt like I knew how to like get into different like sort of industries, opportunity wise, career wise. Like now I have a big interest in like social injustice. So like I'll like for me I would want a job in either social injustice or sports or fitness, but beforehand it would have just been fitness. I like the way how they take a holistic approach. So like not just looking at us as a problem, but looking at our surroundings as a problem and try to tap into everything to make it just better for us. So like everything's leveled, so we're not getting distracted and don't get into like reoffending and whatever. I'll say that's what's good. Yeah, you're muted.
Thank you, Shaheen. Perhaps you should be hosting, and you could do both. I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about why you think the approach that Project Futures has taken really engages young people, and why maybe, you know, how it's different. And we've had some questions from the audience about, you know, how young people come to trust Project Futures. You know, why trust Project Futures? Because it's a big problem in statutory services, that there's a sense that, you know, maybe communities don't trust us. So what is it that's been done differently here, do you think?
They was able to be patient and take time.
What would it look like though on the ground? I mean, what would they have done? Where would they be? Would they be available a lot of the time? How would you know? How would you build?
So they was available. They was available on call a lot of the time. They wasn't really. So it wasn't like school. You know how teachers like on your back on the time, like hovering over you, make sure you're doing the work. So us, it was more on our call, because it's just like our generation don't really like to be told what to do. That's just what it is. And that's why a lot of people are trying to get into like self-employment now. But we don't like to be told to do so. It's on our call, and the way it's co-produced, like we could take the lead on it. So that's why I guess. And then once we like ask for something and it actually gets done, that's where the trust comes in as well. But that did take a very long time.
That's it. And I think Alison, I would say a really key part of engagement for us from the very beginning was the fact that this is peer referral. So the only way, particularly at the Project Future Hub, that young people can access the space is through their friends. It's been a very long time to build because young people have had really difficult experiences often of the system. But the fact that somebody in their peer group has vouched for the project, or somebody in the team, and that young people come and be in the space and observe and understand kind of what we're about and how we work, they can then decide kind of when it is that they want to reach out and how they want to seek support. And being able to consistently follow things through has, I think felt important and given young people a real sense of ownership over the space.
And how have you managed to grow that sense of trust? And are there any risks associated with it for anyone involved?
So just to add to what Hannah has said, so initially, Al, it took us literally almost 7 to 8 months. We sat there in the project, and young people would drop in, but were very untrusting of us. But we never pushed them, as Shaheen and Hannah have said. We would wait, but also what we did simultaneously is we used attachment theory, and we knew we had to develop trust in a very non-threatening way for our young people, and also model help seeking, because help seeking is quite a difficult construct in our young people's lives, because they've asked for help in the past and haven't got it, or they've fallen through gaps in mainstream services. So we were very aware of that work. So, and obviously we waited, we've been very patient, you know, and again, building trust through peers. So we don't take referrals. We kind of accept our young people's friends and friends of friends, and actually family, and thereby we we make an intervention also not just at an individual but at a peer level, all their friends, but also at a community level. We will intervene if it means we have to help the family member as well. So we literally are looking at community resilience in the whole. And I've kind of I haven't addressed your question around risk. So risk we take very seriously, literally at a static dynamic level. We have so behind the scenes we do a lot of, so in the face of it, it might feel like light touch with our young people, but behind the scenes there's a lot of, with the partners, and a huge governance system that's sort of supporting and scaffolding risk at every level. And I'm sure Shaheen will be able to vouch for that, that we through the NHS governance, we provide a lot of, risk assessments, and I'm sure Hannah can speak to this as well, but also from the local authority perspective, we're looking at community safety, and constantly we get risk alerts from the community, which we are always kept informed about, because there are very often tensions rising. I don't like to use the word gang, but there are inter-gang rivalries, and we are always cited on that. So it's not just clinical, but also local authority and other aspects that we do risk assessment on. Hannah, do you want to add something more to that, because you're in the midst
and maybe
of
I could just ask a question, which is, in this relation to risk, it can often be very difficult to both keep people safe and keep their trust, especially when they don't perceive themselves to be at risk, or they want there is a sense that people want some help, but they don't necessarily want the statutory the sort of statutory interventions that can follow from safeguarding alerts. So I'm interested in how you maintain trust at the same time as keep everyone safe. And how you manage to do that in a nimble enough way that you really can work with these in this very innovative, non-clinical, responsive way.
And I think, Al, that's really where there's a few things to say in response to that, really. It's really where the partnership has been incredibly key. So not only do we have that robust governance that Suchi is talking about, but also because we sit slightly outside of statutory services, we're able to hold on to this kind of nimbleness that you talk about, where we can not only hold the risk safely within the project, but also be able to support young people into statutory services by bridging those relationships, kind of softly sometimes and slowly when needed. I guess the other part in terms of risk management that has been absolutely fundamental is what Suchi is talking about. From the very beginning, young people and kind of more senior members of this community have been involved in how we best keep the project safe. And they are really, again, best placed to know who is safe to be here and how we manage the safe space. And so the co-production of risk management has been very, very key. Of course, there are non-negotiables, but within that, we are checking out with young people and our team of youth employees kind of how we manage different dilemmas, and how do we kind of, if there have been particular ruptures in relationships, how are we going to work through challenges? And so it is a dynamic process, but yeah, there is kind of keeping young people involved in that conversation all of the way. And again, holding in mind all of the things as a psychological practitioner that we would usually, in terms of clear communication, consistency of approach, transparency where possible, and setting up those ground rules and the frame around the project alongside the young people themselves.
In at this point, because we've had a question from the audience about the how of co-production. So in your experience with this project, how do you think that this that risk is managed in a co-produced way, a way that enables young people to feel safe, but also statutory services to have assurance that safety is being maintained and communities to feel safe. What's your sense of how that's been co-produced?
So your main part of the question is how you keep the project safe at co-produce level.
Yeah, how's the co-production done? So, you know, how much did you feel that you could lead that you could influence that
So
you were, yeah.
Yeah, so the co-production, there'll be like a project or issue, and then they'll come to us and speak about it, and we'll come to agreement before they make the final decision. Sometimes it's out of their power, but we're still, like, even when it's out of our power, we're still allowed to like voice our opinions for our opinions to get to the people who are in power. But that's like for keeping us safe, or maybe if the project has to close down or we don't want it to close down, or we feel that we're safe. Because really and truly, the people in power aren't gonna understand the in-depth, in like the really what's going on. It's us that, so we'll know if it's safe or not. And other than that, so say there could be like a trip or something that would be like educational for like young people at the project, but they will come to us first and say, what do we think, before actually making the final decision.
Okay. So it sounds like you feel like you have quite a lot of authority to be able to say no to things, but also that there are times when the things that you know best about get overruled. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think that's it, Al. And I think from our perspective, the nuance that's often missed with co-production is we're not then saying that young people lead everything, but that it's a team and that we're all contributing and co-producing and collaboratively trying to create this work.
So if I can give some examples, Al, to bring it to life. So we have several projects within Project Future, hitting the 4 domains that Hannah talked about, which is well-being, stability, reducing offending, and the stability needs. Education, employment as well. And for example, we have cookery projects, we have gym projects, we have sexual health projects, we have a lot of fun things like go-karting and community, football projects, just a lot, there are lots. I can't even, there's a whole list we've got in the 4 domains for the outcomes. At every level, our young persons, whenever there's a project mentioned from their idea, from their innovative ideas and their needs, we will consult, and it's not just consult in terms of just their views, but they will co-produce that project with us and actually deliver it with us. And whilst doing that, we will wrap mental health interventions in a very gentle way, so that in keeping in mind their well-being. So that's just an example of how we would take forward. I mean, in addition to that, obviously, we will empower them to then speak up in pretty important platforms like the Home Affairs Select Committee and etc. So it's a range, and our young people enter at different levels. So if there's somebody quite new and young, we will model help seeking right the way through with the older young people in the project. And it's done through a very organic, dynamic, but very governance way. So at the back of this, there's a lot of clinical thinking that psychologists that's taking place.
Thanks very much. So I just wanted to ask, I think there'll be a lot of interest for services like these locally. And I just wanted to ask, and I don't know who would be best placed to answer this, how would local people best go about ensuring that something like this could be set up locally?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah.
First? I would say first identify what it is that one wants to deliver in the community. So we obviously, so when I partnered with Charlie Howard with Back UK, it was obviously we were looking at serious youth violence. So I think it's identifying what the area in community resilience and capacity building will be, and then to look at your key stakeholders. So we knew very quickly that would not be CCG for us, because they don't do specialist commissioning. We are not a mental health kind of secondary care provider as such. We are an innovative mental health provider. So we very quickly realized we needed to get charitable funding. So once you know what area you want to work on in the community, then your key stakeholders will almost follow immediately from that, and then obviously do a lot of stakeholder engagement, contacting the right people to actually inform and provide that intelligence of how you go by doing it together. My only plea is to do it in partnership, in a truly integrated partnership, because that partnership brings a variety of expertise to the table, especially in dealing with complex, not just mental health, but other issues, because we take health, social inequalities very, very seriously, including race inequalities. So it depends on what the issue is. That's a burning issue.
That's great. Thank you so much. Well, we've run out of time. It's been fantastic listening to you. And I'd just like to thank you, Suchi, Hannah, for a fantastic broadcast. And see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.